Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we need to talk about a situation that is putting Japan on high alert and making headlines across the globe. The rising tension in the Asia-Pacific region is getting more serious by the day as China and Russia have once again sent their warships near Japanese waters. This is not just a normal naval exercise. It is a signal, a message, and perhaps even a provocation aimed directly at Tokyo and its allies. For many experts, this is one of the clearest warnings that Japan must prepare for a future where its security is tested like never before. Japan has been closely monitoring Chinese and Russian military activity for years, but what we are seeing now is a new level of cooperation between Beijing and Moscow. Their warships are operating together, sometimes in joint patrols, sometimes shadowing each other, and always very close to Japanese territory. This is causing serious concerns within the Japanese government, which already sees China as its biggest long-term security threat and Russia as an unpredictable power since its invasion of Ukraine. In recent months, the Japanese Ministry of Defense has reported a significant increase in the number of foreign naval vessels passing through key waterways around its islands. The Tsushima Strait, the Sea of Japan, and the East China Sea are now witnessing frequent Chinese destroyers and Russian frigates sailing side by side. This is not just routine freedom of navigation. It is strategic signaling, and Tokyo knows it. Japan's self-defense forces have been forced to scramble ships and aircraft repeatedly to keep track of these movements. This situation is happening while Japan is boosting its own military capabilities at a speed we haven't seen in decades. The government has announced record defense budgets, expanded missile programs, and closer coordination with the United States, Australia, and other partners. The reason is clear. Japan cannot afford to be caught unprepared. With tensions rising in Taiwan, the South China Sea, and even on the Korean Peninsula, Tokyo understands that its own security could be threatened at any moment. One of the most worrying developments for Japan is the possibility of a two-front challenge. On one side, China is rapidly expanding its navy, building aircraft carriers, and deploying advanced missiles that could target Japanese bases. On the other side, Russia is not staying quiet. Despite its war in Ukraine, Moscow continues to send bombers, submarines, and surface ships into waters near Japan. Together, these two powers could put enormous pressure on Japan's defense forces. For ordinary Japanese citizens, this growing military activity is a reminder that their country is no longer living in a post-war bubble of peace. The pacifist constitution may have kept Japan away from major conflicts for decades, but times are changing. The public is now debating whether Japan should acquire counterstrike capabilities, whether it should revise its constitution to allow a stronger military, and how far it should go in supporting U.S. operations in a potential Taiwan conflict. The Japanese government has been very clear that it will defend its territory at all costs. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has repeatedly warned that what is happening in Ukraine could easily happen in East Asia. If China decides to use force against Taiwan, Japan would almost certainly be involved because of its geographic position and its security alliance with the United States. The U.S. maintains key bases in Okinawa and elsewhere in Japan, which would be crucial in any military response to a Chinese attack. The timing of these Chinese and Russian naval operations is also notable. They often happen after major diplomatic or military events, almost as if they are meant to send a message. For example, whenever Japan meets with U.S. officials to strengthen security ties, or when it participates in joint exercises with partners like Australia or India, Chinese and Russian ships appear close to Japanese waters. This pattern suggests that Beijing and Moscow are working together to pressure Japan, and to remind it of the risks of siding too closely with Washington. Analysts believe that these moves are part of a broader strategy to challenge U.S. influence in the Indo-Pacific. By putting Japan under constant stress, China and Russia can try to divide the alliance system and weaken the resolve of America's allies. But so far, the effect seems to be the opposite. Japan is becoming more determined, more committed to strengthening its military, and more willing to cooperate with other democracies in the region. This determination can be seen in Japan's decision to acquire long-range cruise missiles from the United States, as well as its plans to build its own hypersonic weapons. These are not small steps. They represent a historic shift in Japanese defense policy. For decades, Japan focused on purely defensive systems. Now it is openly talking about the ability to strike enemy bases if necessary. This is a major message to both Beijing and Moscow that Japan will not sit back if it feels threatened. China's reaction to Japan's moves has been very sharp. Beijing accuses Tokyo of abandoning its pacifist tradition and following Washington into confrontation. Chinese state media regularly warns Japan not to interfere in Taiwan or the South China Sea. Meanwhile, Russia has stepped up its rhetoric too, accusing Japan of becoming hostile and threatening to take measures in response to Japanese sanctions over Ukraine. This war of words adds even more tension to an already dangerous situation. The question many are now asking is whether this standoff could escalate into an actual clash. Military experts say that the risk of accidents or miscalculations is rising. When multiple warships and aircraft operate in close proximity, even a small mistake could trigger a crisis. Japan has repeatedly lodged diplomatic protests, but China and Russia do not seem to be backing down. If anything, they are becoming more aggressive. One possible flashpoint is the disputed Senkaku Islands, known as Diaoyu in China. These uninhabited islands are administered by Japan but claimed by China. Chinese Coast Guard vessels regularly enter the waters around the islands, and Japan is forced to respond each time. If a collision or confrontation occurs, the situation could spiral quickly. And if Russia decides to back China politically or militarily, Japan could face an extremely difficult scenario. At the same time, Japan is also dealing with the threat from North Korea, which continues to launch missiles into the sea, sometimes even over Japanese territory. This creates a multi-directional security challenge. It means that Japan must prepare for Chinese pressure, Russian provocations, and North Korean missile attacks all at